Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brain Muffin at the Movies. And it's time we talk about Star Wars, at least a little bit. We had a trailer not too long ago, teaser trailer, and, most of the fan community was just kind of like, yeah, don't really care. So I came across this article, The Rise of Skywalker Concerns Me, a very casual Star Wars fan. And I haven't read this, and so I don't know if I'm going to agree with him or I'm going to think he's just crazy or whatever, but we'll find out. The Last Jedi sent a message to the Star Wars fandom that, at least from the filmmaker's perspective, the Skywalker story has already come to a close. Now, in my view, the Skywalker story kind of comes to a close in Return of the Jedi. But, this is kind of like saying, the Caesar line comes to a close when Augustus, dies or something. But, it goes on for another several hundred years. It was a bold pivot from the nostalgic direction The Force Awakens appeared to be taken in the franchise in, and unsurprisingly, left many hardcore fans of the original trilogy beside themselves with displeasure. Okay, all right, that's true. This is unsubstantiated. It's an unsupported statement, and it kind of leaves it open. The Force Awakens was not a nostalgia. It was a reboot. But for those of us, let's say casual Star Wars fans, who've long felt that the Skywalker's overwhelming dominance in Star Wars media is one of the franchise's more glaring drawbacks. Oh boy, go look at ancient Rome. Okay, look at how the Rome goes from a republic to a dictatorship. It's only a handful of people running all the things. Now there's a lot of other things that go on, but you just have a couple families that are feuding really, and it's amazing how few people. Let's just say that's what I said. It's like reading empire. The Roman Imperial. Let's say the first few hundred years of the Imperial Rome, and thinking, my goodness, when did the Caesars? I know Caesar's the name, but Julius Caesar's line. When does this stop? Because you have him and he's got what was it? His Octavian, his nephew, I think, and he adopts him if I remember correctly. But anyway, let's get back to the article before I go off on too many tangents. I don't agree with that statement right there. Last Jedi was a promise of something fresher. No, something less encumbered by the large fandom's collective emotional baggage. But then came this year's Star Wars Celebration, the Rise of Skywalker trailer, title announcement, and that dusty maniacal laugh. Okay. So it's almost like this guy's going to dislike the trailer because it went back. And I actually know some people that like The Last Jedi because of what it's like. Really, you could have had, but this was, The Force Awakens was made to bring people back. So this is why the characters were used and dangled out there like, bait. And, but we could have had something that was, Luke training some others and other Jedi, and, we could have gone on with things. Did I skip something? Yes, I did. Okay. No, I didn't. Trailer announcement. Okay. Efforts. Okay. While there's sure to be an interesting explanation as to how Palpatine will return he doesn't. It's just a recording. His presence in Skywalker, which might implied elevation of the Skywalker name, suggests a larger return to the status quo. The status quo is gone. The Last Jedi killed off the status quo. And the prequels were about it. The whole thing with Star Wars, so what we have is a family opera, soap opera, and it's about the rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. And this person has completely missed that point. I don't even think you're a casual fan. I think you're just a casual moviegoer. But that was the whole point of the original 6 movies, especially the first 3. And the first 3 were the prequel 3 were to show us how Anakin becomes Darth Vader. And we can agree and we can argue over how well that happened, but that's the whole point. And if you read any of the books, they always, at least the ones I read, when I was a teenager, 30 plus years ago, I read some of those books. They all said from the adventures of Luke Skywalker on them. But again, this is like, like I keep saying, getting away from just a handful of families. Go, Rome is a great example. Though Rian Johnson spent years addressing countless complaints from fans who felt blind. No, he didn't. He didn't address them. He made fun of fans. The director recently admitted to fine with the idea that The Rise of Skywalker might retcon elements of his film. Of course not. His goal, which was well reached, was just to basically get all the fans arguing with one another. Half the audience love it, although I don't think it's half. It's about 30% of the audience loves it. 30% of the audience hates it. And what's that? 40% probably doesn't give a crap. In killing off Supreme Leader Snoke so abruptly, The Last Jedi ended a significant chunk of the groundwork first laid in The Force Awakens that put this current chapter of Star Wars into uncharted territory. Run-on sentence. Though the character wasn't very well fleshed out, no kidding, Snoke was Star Wars' new big bad, filling an important narrative role by as Palpatine to Kylo's nascent Darth Vader. Yep, in Snoke and Kylo's complemented relationship, you can see the spiritual echoes of Darth Vader's fall from grace. Yeah, I would agree with that. Spiritual echoes. They weren't true echoes because Kylo Ren was they're all horrible characters. Very poorly written, not intimidating, just a whiny emo boy. But their story was further complicated, interestingly, by Rey's ascendance as the newest and perhaps most powerful Jedi. Most powerful, they don't need a comma, it's a comma splice. Jedi destined to bring balance to the Force. You know, this is one of those phrases from the prequels. I still don't know what this means. I know what I think it means, but you know, the Jedi were in the prequels. They were talking about balance of the Force, bring balance to the Force. There were thousands of Jedi and no Sith. So I don't know where the balance is. Without Snoke, the newest Star Wars films would, in theory, be forced to continue the story without a convenient established cinematic parallel with the same universe to call back to. Cinematic parallel, yeah, because they were trying to just rip off. I mean, even with The Last Jedi, as fresh as this person wants to believe it were, it's like a little bit of Return of the Jedi and Empire in reverse order. You have your big battle, your big space battle at the end. Well, I guess that's like the end of Return of the Jedi. So you have that at the beginning of Last Jedi, and then they end up on Salt World. And then they're still running. The whole thing is a horrible chase. For decades now, the Star Wars franchise has been telling varied versions of the same Jedi-centric stories without a bigger plot about conflicts between different incarnations of the Galactic Empire and the Resistance. Within a bigger plot. Wait a minute, I missed something. What are open to a world of possibilities in terms of new direction for characters like Rey to go in? Well, we did get Rey, Finn and not Finn. Yeah, Finn and Rose Tico go off on an adventure by themselves, and we have anti-capitalism and all this other stuff. We have slaves, free the animals, but not the slaves. They're Rose Tico. Of course, and the animals can be easily rounded back up over the next few days, so it really doesn't do anything. For decades now, Star Wars franchise has been telling varied versions of the same Jedi-centric stories. That's because the Jedi and the Force, that is an integral part of the mythos and religion and beliefs of the galaxy that is the Star Wars galaxy. That's like putting writing adventures set in Western Europe, say during medieval times, and then complaining that the church is too much of an integral part, or people's faith in Christianity, or the Norse legends have too much of the gods in them. This is insane. Within a bigger plot about conflict. Okay, so the stories within a bigger plot about conflicts between different incarnations of the Galactic Empire and the Resistance. Okay, so we have the Empire and the Rebels. Okay, television series like Star Wars Rebels have done their part in contributing to the big picture by introducing new characters with substance, pivotal arcs. But that's important work that the flagship films should arguably be able to do as well. I would say that the original trilogy did a good job. The prequels did an okay job. This is again because really. George Lucas needed some feedback and pushback to make those things better. And the TV shows really help. The Clone Wars really helped kind of flesh out Anakin because his turn was just not believable. But, we had a lot of books and other things. Back in the day, we didn't have any other shows. And some books were great. Some books were really horrible. But they weren't necessary to understand what was going on. And with The Force Awakens, immediately we get a book and they're saying, well, you have to read the book to understand. No, the movies, I do agree with this. The movies should stand on their own. And the extra materials should just fill in the gaps, right? You're getting the highlights in a 2-hour movie. And then you can use the other thing to kind of fill in the backstory and other things that it just, otherwise you end up with 40 films that are 3 hours long and no one's, it'd be like watching the History Channel, right? On the big screen. Bringing Palpatine back has the potential to transform the Force Awakens and Last Jedi poetic rhyming with the original films into something more akin to the pretext of an undeserved and perhaps strategically conservative kind of storytelling that would feel like a sizable step back for Star Wars as a whole. There may be some truth in that, because J.J. Abrams doesn't know how to end anything. The poetic rhyming with the original films, The Force Awakens is a complete ripoff of A New Hope. So it's really not poetic. So this is not strong enough in my book. But I see I believe I understand what's going on here. And I would probably agree that it is a bit of a step back, but I think we've just kind of gone in a circle. We really haven't gone in any new territory. And The Last Jedi was just a crap fest for the fans. It was just a dump on the fans. And that's what Rian Johnson was trying to do. Within the universe of the films themselves, it returns the story to a battle that, up until this point, was rather safe to assume was finished. Yeah. But from a meta perspective, it also reads as a response to some parts of the fandom's bad faith critics of the new films. That they don't stand on their own. They're horrible. They have poorly written characters and very shallow characters, and they're just mimicking the originals. After 2 installments about Rey's rise to prominence at the center of the story that was distinctly her own, The Rise of Skywalker, based on the title alone, feels almost like a kind of capitulation to those who bemoan the fact that Luke hasn't been the primary focus of late. Luke should have been a more prevalent character. Now, see, I don't know if this person, who is writing this, it's a guy, I know, Charles Pulliam-Moore. Choose the last name, dude. You don't have to hyphenate your name. The thing is, this was known with the Lucas Story Group. Every time Luke showed up, he overshadowed their really horrible characters. And Luke should have had more dominant. Look at the first film. Look at how much Obi-Wan dominates once he is introduced, how much he dominates the narrative until his death, okay? Until his sacrifice that they can escape. Luke, in many ways, is the audience who's asking the questions so that people know what in the world's going on, and these other characters are in and around him. Luke could have had that kind of a role in The Force Awakens, and I think it would have been, if it was done well, I think people would have been fine seeing Luke sacrifice himself for the greater good, just like Obi-Wan did in the first film, and we've been fine. But what they've done is destroyed, in particular, The Last Jedi. I mean, we got, Luke milking some kind of sea cow and then drinking it straight. I mean, it's just, they have destroyed these characters. That's what people are upset about. Not that the fact that Luke was not the primary focus, but what they did to Luke. Okay. So this person's missing the whole point, and I think on purpose, because that's not the problem. I mean, people talk about that, and that was the Lucasfilm's story group's problem, is every time Luke showed up, he overshadowed everybody, but we didn't like the way he was treated, Han Solo was treated. Heck, we don't like the way that Princess Leia has been treated. And the accomplishments in the original movies just kind of been swept under the rug. And, I know, Carrie Fisher and everybody's old, but there's no reason to just kind of, I mean, they got her like a senile little bat in The Last Jedi. And I'm like, this isn't Princess Leia. The concept of the Skywalker name becoming a title or symbol of a new type of Force-sensitive order makes all the sense in the world, and that'd be a fitting, clever way of incorporating the character's legacy. It would be if it was hundreds of years later and there had been no Skywalkers. And kind of like the concept of Caesar becoming a title. Julius Caesar, and then everything becomes a title from that. So that would be a decent way, I think, if it had been a lot of time and there had been some mythos about it. Similar to what we did with the Darth, in the first movie, Darth Vader is called Darth, or he's called Lord Vader by other people, but Obi-Wan calls him Darth, and then that's retconned to be more of a title in the later movies, and then of course in the prequels and stuff. So we have Darth Maul and Darth Sidious and everybody else, and that's fine. But I would say this would work better if it was hundreds of years later. And I think in some ways they should have just done that. I didn't necessarily need to see the return of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, but when they promised them, that's part of why I went. And then when I saw what they did to those characters and how they completely destroyed what they accomplished in the first movies, then that's what annoyed me. It can be easier to forget that Star Wars is meant to be read as a space opera. Yep. Furnished with all sorts of melodramatic plot twists and sleights of hand designed to throw audiences for a loop. Yep. But even the campiest, most outlandish of soap operas understands the necessity of letting new characters properly step outside of the long shadows of those who came before them. Hopefully Palpatine's appearance. Okay. Well, okay, being nothing more than a single well-timed Space Ghost crackle meant to wear on Kylo or Rey's mind, because bringing him back to the fore as an extant Star Wars power player, that would mean existing. Okay, as an extent, yeah, as an existing, yeah, okay, that's fine, correct. Would inadvertently weigh the film down and keep it from being all it could be. That's possible. It's the rumor is that the Palpatine thing, it is a hologram. Yep, that's the word I'm looking for. It's a recording, which is fine. I don't mind it being a Sith Force ghost or a vision or anything that Kylo Ren has. You know, let's say he's trying to meditate to become more evil, and Palpatine shows up and says, "You're not your father, and you never will be," or something like that. This isn't okay. This is IO9 Gizmodo, by the way, and this is an okay article, but this, I don't know if Charles purposely misses some of the points that people are complaining about, or does not understand what they are. The movie doesn't come out to December. The only trailer shows barely anything about the plot. I think it's a bit early. No, I don't think it's early for these types of pieces. Look at what the first two movies are. They're horrible. Clearly not. To your question, we've always working on plenty of stories. Okay, so, and I don't want to click here because this goes to a completely different place, and I think it's even misaligned, but I'll bring it up in another tab. But I don't, it's all cockamamie BS, and you got to like sign in and all this other stuff. This is, Zach has the best here. This is part of the problem, is that it's pretty clear that nobody had a basic outline of a sequel trilogy plot prior to anything but being made. That is true. And the other side of it is the politics of personal destruction was far more important than the story. This is why we get Han Solo worse than he was at the beginning of Star Wars, leaving his family. We get Luke Skywalker running away. You know, Luke Skywalker has vanished. Is how that opening crawl, The Force Awakens, starts. And we don't really know why. We get no information why. We just know he's disappeared. People look for him. And I'm like, fine, if you're going to use him as a MacGuffin, have him show up mid through the third movie, maybe save the day and sacrifice something, not have him just show up and then be an absolute cuck in The Last Jedi. What they did with Luke in The Last Jedi and what they did in Han Solo in the first one is horrible. And if they do the same thing to Billy D. Williams' character with, in the third one, it's just going to be, I mean, Disney thinks they have a problem right now, but if they crap on Lando, which they've already sort of done with Solo, which is why, in many parts, why it is the first Star Wars movie to lose money. They do that to Lando in whatever, the Rise of Skywalker. There is going to be holy hell to pay, and people are going to be absolutely beside themselves. They've already trashed two great characters. I think they've also trashed Princess Leia. They did it to a lesser degree than the other two. And what they did, even with what's his name, the redhead, they went from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. They turned him into not Snoke. The name will come to me eventually. This is what people have been, I'm making all my comments about, Morton Downey Jr. and all this other stuff. When I get frustrated and I get flustered, then I don't remember. But these movies are so forgettable. That's the thing. The characters are so poorly written. There's so much potential there, but they completely screwed it up. But yes, if they do that to Lando and Billy Dee Williams' character Lando, I think it's going to be an absolute. They aren't going to be able to sell another Star Wars movie for 10, 20 years. And their next trilogy will do very poorly. And backlash has already started on that, so we'll see. All right, so what do you think? Do you think Charles here has a point? Do you think I'm missing something? I think he's misrepresented or doesn't understand what the fans don't like. But I do agree with some of his concerns. And the new characters are so poorly written that as soon as an original trilogy character, other than maybe Chewie, R2-D2 steals scenes, C-3PO steals scenes, Chewie is I don't know, maybe Chewie, even him. But, Lando, he's going to steal the scene unless they come out too, and that would just be a crying shame to destroy so much of the original trilogy. But anyway, that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for sharing and subscribing. See you later. Bye. Is it record? Yeah, I think so. I'm probably going to use this as the image. Does it get all the way down to the bottom? Because that's a great. That's the best comment in here. All right, 3, 2, 1.